Dream of saving someone from drowning. If you've ever woken up from a dream of saving someone from drowning, sit up and pay attention. I know you're probably going to be trying to catch your breath. You might even be sweating a bit. Your heart is pounding so much that it might seem like it's about to jump out of your chest. This is precisely the kind of situation where you need to be more mindful of the exact symbols and situations that appeared in your dream about someone drowning. Standard Dream Dictionary interpretation of saving someone from drowning. The main motif of this type of dream is the water. Without first understanding what the water means, you cannot come up with a workable interpretation of saving someone from drowning. Water represents chaos, and chaos in our lives takes many different forms. It operates in a seemingly infinite number of ways, but ultimately it all boils down to chaos. The nature of chaos. It's something we cannot anticipate, control, contain, or to a large extent even understand. It is our shadow that cuts through our psychological, emotional, and spiritual aspects. Now, it's easy to understand given this description if you're fearful or suspicious of this aspect of your personality. But believe it or not, this is where your power comes from. This is what ultimately drives you. Emotions as chaos. Just as we're only able to fully understand the importance and value of land after we've spent time keeping ourselves from drowning in the ocean, the same applies to chaos. In our typical day-to-day experience, chaos is exemplified by our emotions. This is the main way we live out or experience chaos. Let me ask you, are you really fully aware and by extension in control of your emotions? If you're being completely honest with yourself, the answer is no. Welcome to the club. If you're like most people, you only need to think about a painful, embarrassing, or guilty memory, and this flood of emotions comes over you. It doesn't just stay at the level of your heart. It doesn't just stay at a rational or decipherable level that you can understand. Emotions and actions. If you go through the process enough times and you associate a certain action or emotion with certain situations, conditions, and circumstances, it's very easy to understand how certain emotions lead to certain behaviors. It's as if you can't help it. For example, if you remember being sexually abused when you're a kid by somebody you trusted, how do you think that would impact your relationships with people in the here and now? How do you think that would shape your willingness to trust and at what level of intimacy you can commit to? It doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman, such experiences have an impact on your emotions which directly shape your decisions today. What is the worst part about the chaos of emotion? The worst part to all of this is it's like being caught up in a watery vortex. It could also become a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's as if you're caught in this endless spiral of emotional response, irregular thinking, automatic actions, and the process repeats itself again and again and again. For example, you have a tough time trusting people because you got ripped off in the past. Maybe you got scammed thousands of dollars. So in your fear and distrust, you are triggered emotionally to be so guarded that you don't take advantage of obvious financial opportunities. What do you think happens next? That's right, you get frustrated because you fear that you're missing out. So finally, you get tired and you take the leap. Friends and families, members refer you to some sort of opportunity, and guess what happens? You get ripped off. So you feel that what happened to you is a self-fulfilling prophecy because the initial hesitation on your part was because you feel that you got ripped off earlier. And this present experience is not going to lead you to trust investments later on until you get desperate again, and the process repeats itself again and again. This can be very frustrating, and it's very easy for a lot of people to feel that they're stuck, that there's nothing that they can do to break the chain. How does the chaos of the unknown manifest itself in our emotional states? This is the key to understanding how this all plays out, this is also the beginning of you breaking any kind of invisible chain holding you back and dragging you down when it comes to automatic thinking and letting your emotions get the better of you. They're all interconnected, and that's why the dream symbolism of drowning is so powerful. You can see somebody thrashing underneath the water with no control, and soon after, their life will drain out of them. This is how strong this dream imagery is. You can't help but experience the chaos within you and the range of emotions that it manifests itself in, front and center. We're looking at an almost indescribable mix of emotions, consequences, impacts, nostalgia, memory, regret, you name it, just like a water vortex spinning out of control before it fizzles out as quickly as it began. It seems that there's no way to control it. And if you add relationships to the mix, it gets even more confusing, and you get this feeling that you are drowning. You're just in over your head, dreaming of somebody else drowning. Now, with the background out of the way, what does it mean to see somebody drowning? Keep in mind that it's not you who's drowning. You're seeing somebody else drown. At this point, we're not going to focus on the identity of the person who is drowning. Instead, we're going to shine a spotlight on how you're supposed to take it all in. If you read somewhere that human beings are driven by selfishness, forget about what you've read. On the contrary, human beings are naturally empathetic. There's a part of us that seeks to relate to other people in front of us. Of course, the more similar they are to us in terms of appearances, the more likely we are to empathize with them. Maybe we have the same religion. Maybe we come from the same part of the world. Maybe we speak the same language. Perhaps we have the same accent. Whatever the case may be, the more similarities there are, the more we identify with them. But even if they are a complete and total stranger with a different color, different religion, different accent, different geographical background, we still can't help but try to emphasize with that person because this need is hardwired into the human condition. When you see that person thrashing about in the water, about to die, it's a very emotionally violent image. And a part of you is pushed to want to save that person. You're pushed to even feel guilty for being in a situation where you feel that you can't help but witness that person die. You feel guilty about the fact that you can't help that person survive. So let's start there. You're seeing somebody thrash about in the water. The meaning of that dream image depends on who it is. Saving a loved one from drowning. This can involve you trying to save or having saved or saving or rescuing someone that is younger than you. It can be your child, a family member, a younger brother or a sister. Whatever the case may be, when you see yourself concerned about this person thrashing about in the water because they are somehow related to you, your subconscious is telling you that you're actually a supportive person. Pillar of support. You might not think that you're a very supportive person, or you might not think that you're all that capable or you're kind. But your subconscious is telling you that you can support these people. You can be a pillar in their lives. They don't have to make the same mistakes as you. You don't have to witness them making the same choices as you did when you were their age. They don't have to get burned, scammed, let down, disappointed, or have to go through a heartbreak. You can do something about it by simply opening your mouth and sharing your experience. Make no mistake, the best way to avoid a problem is to simply listen to advice from people who learn things the hard way. So by simply sharing with them your heartbreaks, your disappointments, and your bad experiences, you will be able to help steer them in the right direction. At the very least, you won't feel guilty if they do end up making the same bad choices you did in the past. Saving a parent from drowning. When you save your mother or your father, this indicates that you are trying to find some sort of closure with your past. Now, this doesn't mean that there was some sort of abuse or neglect. This doesn't even mean that necessarily that you had a tough or bad relationship with your parents. Instead, this speaks to a deeper and more fundamental truth. At the end of the day, children should seek to become better than their parents, becoming better than our parents. At some point, we want to become greater than our parents. This is biological evolution. We are compelled to try to live a better life and pass on that better life to our children. Who do we compare our lives to? Naturally, we compare it to our parents. We want to live a better life than the people who came before us. This is a natural dream. There's no competition here. This is just natural progression. We move forward in terms of higher heights to climb, greater challenges to overcome, greater summits to master, and more vistas and horizons to explore. Again, this is hardwired into the human DNA. This is how human beings spread throughout the face of the earth. For this to take place in your life and for you to participate in this all-natural progression, you have to have a healthy relationship with the idea of competition. This doesn't have to involve some sort of disrespect. If you see yourself trying to pull your family member from the water and they appear dead or their color has changed into gray, this is not a prediction that they would die. Instead, your subconscious is telling you that you should be careful about what you choose to hang on to when it comes to family memories and, most importantly, your ideas regarding your family members or your family history. Because in many cases, we hang on to a family narrative that prevents us from moving on and reaching higher heights. There's an old saying, respect the fire, but don't worship the ashes. In other words, we need to respect our past. But at the same time, we have to be open-minded enough to accept the fact that whatever worked in the past may not necessarily work out in the future. They might not even work or be all that applicable in our own time. So you have to be open-minded and adaptable while at the same time preserving certain principles or certain lived experiences and stored lessons, often learned the hard way, so you don't have to figure them out on a first-hand basis in the here and now. Interestingly enough, the problems your parents went through and tried to solve are probably the same problems you're going to have to deal with. But times change, so your exact solution may slightly differ from those used by people who came before you. And this is perfectly okay. Saving a relative from drowning in the ocean. You may be thinking to yourself, what's the big difference between saving a family member in a bathtub and doing the same in the open ocean? Is there really a big difference between saving somebody's life in a backyard pool and doing so in the middle of the Pacific Ocean? The change in venue indicates the scope of the problem. This is all a question of scope and scale. When you're trying to save or you've successfully saved a relative from drowning in the ocean, your subconscious is telling you that you are dealing with forces that are almost beyond your control because the consequences are vast. They are not compartmentalized or easy to chart or limit or predict as with the consequences of struggling in a backyard pool. We are, after all, dealing with the ocean and all its mystery and majesty. It's very deep, wide, and it has surface storms. There's a lot going on. Let go and believe that things will work out for the best. When you save somebody in that ocean context, your subconscious is telling you that you have to accept the fact that you can only act up to a certain extent. Past that point, you just have to trust that things will work out. Unfortunately, a lot of people are under the impression that they have a lot more control than they really do. And this is what gets us in trouble. We expect things to work out exactly how we had hoped, but this is not realistic. You're not living in reality when you do that. You just have to leave the rest alone, because when you find yourself in a situation where the possibilities of different reactions and combinations of reactions and consequences are almost limitless, it's easy to go crazy. It's easy to worry about stuff that has a very low chance of happening, but people do this anyway. It's an absolute waste of imagination. 9 times out of 10, the worst case scenario that you think up simply doesn't come to pass. This is the power of worry. It grinds you down on so many different levels. That's why you see yourself saving in the process, or you're in the process of saving, and you end up taking action and feeling guilty. You just have to reach a point where you can safely say to yourself with all confidence that I did everything I can, and everything else is up to nature. It's up to a higher power. At that point, you can stop, because anything past that point, it's actually pointless. It's useless. There is such a thing as a point of diminishing returns. Saving a baby from drowning in a pool or ocean. If the image of the person you're saving in the process of saving from drowning is a baby, this indicates some sort of emotional vulnerability on your part involving maturity. Let's face it, we mature at different levels. What I mean by this is that when you are in a room full of people, you are probably going to be at a different maturity level than other people there. But even within your own consciousness, there are different areas of reality that make up who you truly are. And not all of these are evenly mature. Some are more mature than others. Be at peace with this reality. Otherwise, you're going to be struggling with trying to cultivate this inner child that refuses to grow up. In reality, that child, deep within you, has a role to play. Stop shielding it from the experiences it needs to go through and experience firsthand so that it can mature. This is how you grow. Unfortunately, most of us try to cherish and shield a part of ourselves, and maybe out of fear, and that part of ourselves never fully matures. Let that child go. You have to cut the umbilical cord, symbolically speaking, of the baby trapped within you. Otherwise, you're going to be hanging on to misconceptions, misunderstandings, or just false ideas that eventually hold you back and drag you down and prevent you from fully maturing in your relationships, in your workspace, in your creative space, and in life in general. It becomes unnecessary baggage. And guess what? It doesn't have to be this way. Saving a stranger from drowning, or saving a drowning unknown woman. Sometimes this dream happens when you're losing your identity in life. You may be thinking, how can this be? I know who I am. But do you really? Most of us tend to define ourselves based on the people we hang out with. Attitudes and mindsets, as well as expectations and assumptions, tend to be infectious. After all, birds of a feather flock together. You have to ask yourself, who am I really? Who do I have to be? Who am I modeling myself after? When you ask yourself these fundamental questions, you start seeing patterns, and it turns out that a lot of the things that you've chosen to become do not really come from you, at least not the person you are right here, right now. This is a tremendously important moment, because when you realize that, you get a clearer view of who you want to be, or who you should choose to be. And this enables you to model yourself after the person you want to develop into, or the person you want to become. This is where you start choosing the proper values and priorities. Choose your values carefully. The opposite of actively owning yourself and isolating a specific identity you want to live out is to just go along to get along. You don't want people to point fingers at you. You definitely don't want people to laugh at you. You don't want to stand out. So you go along to get along. When you do this, you're committing suicide and you're wasting a tremendous amount of time. The last thing that you want to do is to find yourself on your deathbed thinking back on your life and regretting the fact that you lived out other people's lives. You pursued other people's dreams. You were caught up in all people's schemes and hopes and wishes. But after everything is said and done, none of this was your own choice. You weren't living up according to your own values. You weren't coming up with something that is distinctly your own. None of that is happening. And talk about the amount of regret that will come over you when you come to that realization. That's no way to live a life. So start to pick out the person that you want to become. And the only person that can do that successfully is you.